Welcome to A State of Mind, a podcast series all about motivating, inspiring, and educating you in the art of selling luxury real estate. The podcast is brought to you by the Institute for Luxury Home Marketing. I'm Tammy Sims, lead trainer for the Institute and a full-time real estate professional in St. Petersburg, Florida for more than 2 decades. In this episode, we're going to continue the conversation we started last month about future-proofing your business, and we'll go further down the path of understanding how you decide when it makes sense to grow your business versus slimming down, how you sense market conditions and economic issues that play into those decisions. Today's podcast is brought to you in part by Real Marketing, the only marketing firm recommended exclusively by the Institute. Real Marketing utilizes over 30 years of expertise, and their products are built and customized for you to dominate any market, anywhere. Go to realmarketingforyou.com. That's real marketing, the number 4, you.com. I'm here today with my co-host, Jack Miller, a 25 plus year veteran luxury agent with Onward Real Estate in the greater Nashville, Tennessee market. Also joining us today is Institute Guild member John Simmons, co-founder of C3 Real Estate Solutions in Fort Collins, Northern Colorado. Since 2012, C3 has grown from just 5 agents to over 160. Now, with divisions for luxury, for land, in-house property management, title and escrow, and mortgage services. John is one of the kindest individuals that I've met, aside from you, Jack, and is always willing to share. So hello to both of you.
Hi, Tammy. Hey, John.
Hello, Tammy. Hello, Jack.
So, John, I want to let you get us started and tell us a little bit about your journey because I know that it is rich, and I think that it would be good for our audience to kind of hear how you got to where you are today.
Tammy, I got my license back in 2006 and I joined a prominent company in our area. But quickly, I realized how much work every transaction entails. And even before I could hire a personal assistant, I hired one because I didn't like the minutia, the writing down the driving directions, on 3 separate applications to order photography and measurements and staging and home warranties. And so before I even launched my career, I had support. And let me tell you the reason why I wanted that support. Prior to getting into real estate, I was in the restaurant industry. There I've always said that my priorities are faith, family, friends, fitness, financing, and fun, right? But in the restaurant industry, it was all work, and then it was family, and then it was faith, and fitness was all the way down at the bottom, right? So I knew I wanted to be independent, to manage my own schedule. There's nobody to blame other than myself for my success or my time off with my wife. Later, I ended up having my kids. So back in 2007, that's when I hired my first assistant who could support me so I could direct and focus my time on my faith and my family, right? So I think a lot of the assistants right now, a lot of the top producers that I have here in Northern Colorado, they're always asking me about team structures and, hey, when do you hire an assistant? I think it really all depends on them and where they're at in their walk of life. If they're sacrificing their priorities, it's time. My common answer to them is you can't afford to not have an assistant, right? Based off of your priorities, let's say you do have faith or you do have fitness, up there at the top, well, you can only do so much, right? So hire an assistant frees up your time for you to allot your time to the priorities of your life. On top of that, I could tell you I've never had an assistant that didn't pay for themselves, right? Meaning as a broker, you have their sphere now. They could be lead generating for you. So your income is greater and your time off is greater. So to me, that's a magical equation.
Absolutely.
Jack and Tammy, we were joking earlier, and I remember one of you said, big isn't always better. I often quote that as well. Just say big isn't always better. I've devoted since 2007 until today to research of teams, proper team structures. And my findings are all over the board. However, one common denominator is the fact that most teams are built off of egos. It's how many transactions, what's my sales volume, what's the GCI, but you look at profitability and that's at the bottom, right? You have these teams of 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, people, but the principal's takeaway is less than what their, producing agents are. Right? So
John, you're saying out loud what I've been saying for years. That's why I was kind of laughing when you said that. That's a hard thing to say out loud to an audience like this, but it's completely true. Just real
is.
simple math. Oftentimes we'll look at teams in our own market and we'll see the strictly or purely the number of people on the team. And we'll look at the overall production of the team. And I look at Robert, my business partner, and say, you know what? There's two of us and we're producing X. There's 16 of them and they're producing X. The math is not working. Why would you want to have that much work and that many people? Now, conversely, there's other teams in our market who have, 15, 20 people and they got incredible production and it makes a lot of sense. That's a great point hearing you say that out loud.
And
Now, I would tell everybody listening to this, listen to Jack. He is right. Bigger isn't better.
but I'm also picking out it's about the value proposition, not just to the community, but to yourself, right? So when you talk about wanting to start a team and get bigger and be the biggest picture in the billboard or on the magazine ad or whatnot, if you're just focused on that and on production and on the numbers, then you can completely forget about your core values. And we tell people all the time in the training, make sure that you have a vision and a mission statement of why you're doing this and what you want out of it. And John, you're reinforcing the fact that if you are able to focus on those priorities, that is also an intangible takeaway of the bottom line.
That's right. Free up your time. My wife deserves time of me. My kids deserve time of me. It's like, where are we directing our time and our energy? I will say this, like my most profitable team, Jack, was a personal assistant that took and I call them non-income producing tasks, right? And then I had one buyer's agent and that was it. So the three of us could divide and conquer. I mean, in 2012, I closed 136 transactions with one buyer's agent and one assistant. And that was it. So when you read the Gary Keller's, Millionaire Real Estate Agent, there's a lot of great team structures that are out there. You can figure out what's most suitable for you. I know what my weaknesses are. I know what my strengths are, right? So I've always operated since I got my license and couldn't afford it under a team structure. Now, organically, our company has grown. So we have changed our goals. If I didn't have the past that I had, if Jesse didn't have the past that he had, we would not be a company of 160, personnel. We call them family members.
I love that.
A family of 160 people. Some people might say you have 160 people, that's 160 problems, right? 100 people is 100 problems, 30 is 30. However, Jesse and I, we both love to coach, teach, train, empower, develop, mentor. We do feel as if we have the best position and job on the planet, meaning we still produce. So we are owner operators. We're still selling real estate. And I'll tell everybody, you make a better living selling real estate than you do leading. If you desire to get into that employing broker role, the running joke is, keep in mind, the broker is broker than the brokers, right? You look at average.
Wait.
I've never
For
heard
those
that
of you,
before.
right, this is going to take a second. It took me a second, so I'm going to repeat that. The broker is broker than the agents.
The brokers.
Than the brokers.
Than the brokers, right?
Yeah,
we're
than the brokers, right? Because you're on a salary, you are capped, right? Your agents are going to be out there producing. And another problem that I see is in this industry is, yes, big isn't always better, but you'll see these people start their companies and grow it, and then they just start chasing their tail. Because they get 10 agents, it requires another assistant. So they hire more agents so that they can increase their bottom line. Right. And then they hire more agents and they need another assistant. Then they need a manager, but their net profits never sees a significant increase. Right. Mm-hmm. That's the whole goal. It's like, why would we start a real estate company, which is pretty much a nonprofit? In our region, it's not lucrative. You're better off opening up a juice bar or a sub shop. Right. Those are companies that are making money. In our industry, it's like, hey, come work for me. Keep 100% of your commissions. Right. So it's a challenge, and it's such a teeter-totter, and you have to decide, what is it that I want? I love to make money. That's how I provide for my family. Hence the high level of service. Hence when I met Tammy, this institute has helped propel my business to the next level. Right. But I'm also satisfied internally by helping others. So you take somebody off the street, you take a young graduate from a university, you take an old school person that has never had finances as part of their equation, and you help them to achieve financial freedom, there's an internal reward for that, and I'm filled by that. And I often say I've made my millions, right? I've made my money. I tripped over, deals over the last, since I got my license. But this now feeds me. So if I get tired of the agents, I have my customers. If I get tired of my customers, I have my agents. So I do get the best of both worlds. I can tell you this, in the downturn, so let's say 2021 was heyday. Everybody was making money. For most realtors and companies, it was the most profitable, the busiest season we have had in years.
Sure.
Right? 2022, 30% decrease in transactions. 2023, another 30% decrease in transactions. That's a challenge when you own a company, right? Because our expenses go up, but yet transactions and sales volume was going down. And then who takes the burden of all the expenses? That's us. So that's the stuff that you highly have to consider if you're looking at growing from a team to a company, right? We scaled intentionally. After we had around 50 licenses, we scaled intentionally and strategically. So we did not grow fast, but that was so we could have our ancillary businesses. We started our property management company, our mortgage company, our title company, so we could have those streams of income come into the company as well, right? So it took, I'd say, 15 years when we started the journey of what's our team structure going to be. Now we've had C3 for 13 years. And I would say it's probably 5 years ago where we said we want 150 of the most elite agents on the planet. That's it. It used to be we wanted to be another quality company in Northern Colorado. Then we changed that goal to we want to be a quality company, in the nation. And now we want to have the top 150 most elite people. And it's not necessarily based off of production, but it's based off of the caliber of the person.
Right. And that's something that I see. So I follow you on Facebook, on social media, and I see when you announce someone new on your team, and something that speaks to me loud and clear every time that you bring someone on, it's someone who's going to match the culture. And I know that culture is one of the hallmarks of C3 and carries into to every division. So how do you identify people that share your values and your culture?
No, those are great questions, Tammy. I mean, we're looking at the 3 C's, which character is number 1, right? Every man and woman has a character. Kind of what is it? Are they going to add value to our company culture? That's the second C. And then what's their commitment level? That's the third C. Commitment encompasses everything. I mean, it's more so, relationship with their spouse, their children, the community, the commitment at work to master, the industry that we're in. Culture, we do ask some culturally based questions, in personal questions, to where we can get to know these people personally and professionally prior to giving them a position. I have been known to hire people that have secondary jobs, but they have assured me through some of the questions that they will cross their T's, dot their I's. They're professional on the field and in the battlefield. How they handle conflict, their communication skills, negotiation skills, administrative skills. They've shown to me that they will be compliant. We've given them an opportunity. We haven't been wrong yet with any of them. There's others that companies will not hire. They've never closed a transaction. Yeah. These are educators and professors to preachers, firefighters, law enforcement, veterans. We have chemists, we have paralegals. They're professionals that are out there. They're involved with the chamber. They're involved with the community. I mean, I could see who you are. We'll ask questions as to what's some of the most recent books that you've read, right? Stalk them online. Go to social media. You can see who these people are. And I would be open and honest. If I see something that's of a concern, I'll talk to them about it. I hired a gentleman. I won't say his name here, but I hired him straight from UNC. I loved everything about him. A big tackle that he played on the football team for 6 years. Big guy with dreadlocks. Looks intimidating. I loved everything about this young man. And I'm pulling him up on social media while I'm doing the interview. And I see beer bottles, and you could see his eyes were red, and he was giving the bird. I just did that on Zoom. Right? He was giving a double birdie. And I looked at this gentleman, and I said, sir, I love everything about you. I said, I have one question for you. I said, if I was one of your friends that I needed to help me with the biggest transaction in my life, like, would I hire this? And I turned the computer around, and I showed it to him. You could just see the blood blew
Oh,
up on his head. And he gave me all the right answers, who he was, his family, who he wants to be. That guy's now been in our industry for, gosh, 15, 16 years, and he's a professional. So you have to
did he
see.
take that post down?
Yeah, he did. The next day, he took that photo down. That was a college photo, having fun, but be careful. What's the perception? And I'm the believer of there's not a perfect person in my company, but they're all committed to doing better and being better people. Okay, so the level of training that we have here as well certainly helps. We have professors that come in and help us with conflict resolution skills and personal, family, and marriage, to parenting, to all the business stuff that we need in our industry. But that shows the level of commitment that these people here have.
I love it. Jack, how often have you and I talked about professional standards and ethics and things that go into us developing relationships with our colleagues?
Oh, absolutely. We had an agent recently who's a big producer in our market. He's not top producer, but he's a very consistent producer and sells some high-end property, who wanted to join our company. And our CEO asked me casually my thoughts on this agent. I said, I like him. I said, some folks, don't seem to be real fond of him, but I said, had some business with him, and went terrific and seemed like a nice guy. Interestingly enough, she surveyed a couple other colleagues of mine that I have a lot of respect for, females, and we found out that he was a different person socially than he was in terms of professionally, and said a lot of inappropriate things to other agents in a professional setting also, that made them really uncomfortable. And it was a habit. This was not a one-off kind of thing. This is a habitual character issue. And so that's when it comes down to culture. We realize quickly, it's like, it doesn't matter how much you produce. That's not going to fit in our culture. And we don't want that as part of our company. So I think that's so important. I love hearing you say that, John. There was something else you said I thought was interesting when you were talking about teams and you talked about size, 20, 30, 40. And we do these super teams will have 30, 40, 50 people on a team. When do you decide that the team is still a good fit for the company, and when you should consider taking that team and creating your own company in our current market? What would you say? What are the things you would evaluate and look at?
No, we're looking at compliance, Jack. I mean, that is a great question. And we do have some heavy hitters. I mean, there's agents here that we've, paid over $2 million in GCI with small teams. I don't have a mega team. The largest team that I have is a team of 4 that's here at C3. But again, we've always said quality over quantity. If you close 5 deals, may they be compliant. If you close 100 plus deals, may you be compliant. If you're getting sloppy, if you're not returning calls, if you're frequently getting complaints from your own customers, everybody else that's around that closing table, we're going to assess that. We're going to look at your checklists, right? Compliance, try to train you, help you to be organized so you can take on that volume, but not damage our brand, right? We want that quality over quantity. We've released 2 top producers in the last 5-6 years. Don't care about the bottom line. We're just not desperate, more so than we care about our brand. I mean, these are people that I would get complaints time and time again for lack of compliance, sloppiness, or some of them were character issues. I'm not just going to fire you. Like, we're going to talk about it. And if you're willing to change, great, we have a match. If you're not willing to change, it's back to that other phrase, since it's principals that are probably going to listen to the Zoom classes, you need to hire slow and you need to fire fast. And that's, I'm looking in the mirror because I'm guilty. I hire slow. That's something we've always done great at. And we have a 2-person interview. Like, let's identify these people. Let's really get to know them before we sign the dotted line. All right. We don't want to make a mistake because that's costly to the culture, to the staff members, the managers, the other agents that are part of C3, and you could destroy your company as quickly as you built it. But firing fast, that has not been in my vocabulary. I'm always the one that I will train you, I will train you, I will train you, I'll help you.
One more chance, one more chance.
Yeah, and then there's 10 chances, but then by the time you finally let them go and your agents are clapping, you
realize that you waited too long.
Yeah. Right. So when agents they see somebody, a particular person within the office, and they turn around to go work from home instead, that's a problem that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Right. So recently we just had the wrong person in the wrong position, and that drove our company culture to the worst culture position we've ever been in.
Hmm.
It wasn't the market, it was an individual that just didn't align. And even when saying, hey, we're going to send them to a couple leadership courses, that gentleman said, I'm not going to change. I would have kept them, but my real estate partner says, then we're not the right fit for you. And that has stood with me, saying, again, hire slow, fire fast, because it will disrupt the company
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
One person ended up following that person to the next company, which shows you he really didn't have the buy-in,
Right.
of the agents. On top of that, there was confusion with others. And so some people go independent or they try to open up their own company. So, but your question, Jack, as far as, when everybody has to identify that, I'm quick to the stick to your assistant and the buyer's agent if all you want is the money. If you love to coach and teach, sacrifice comes with that, right? Like the leaders that are out, I tell my managing brokers here, they've all stepped into this position. And I frequently have to remind them that leaders do not sail the calm waters.
Mm.
You're dealing with garbage. You're dealing with challenges, shit, if you will. You could edit that if you want, Tammy. It's not.
We know what it is.
That's right.
Yes.
It's not for everybody. But if you're passionate about it, it will certainly be rewarded. But you have to have thick skin to be a leader of a larger company.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to dig deep and say, man, do we just continue to sell with a 3-person team, or do we grow something? And I'll tell you, the first office we opened up, Tammy and Jack, we wanted 22 agents. That's how many seats would have fit in that office. 22 agents that committed to our C's and who we were. We filled it. That was the problem. All of a sudden we had 30, we had 35 licenses in that office. Several of them.
And 22 seats.
Exactly. Several of them which commuted from Greeley, Colorado. So we asked them, we said, man, if we had an office in Greeley, would you stay at C3 or would you office out of the Greeley office? They said, oh my gosh, John, like we'd office out of C3 Greeley, right? They were commuting there because there they got the systems, the technology, the staff support, the leadership. They were willing to commute 35 minutes just to be a part of the company. So because of that, we opened up C3 Greeley. We filled it. We opened up C3 Loveland. We filled it. So kind of the growth kind of happened organically. And that's when we pivoted and we said, man, we need X amount of volume listings. We need X amount of, purchases, borrowers that are obtaining loans for us to have these joint ventures, right? And that's where real financial opportunity comes as an employing broker. If you don't have that, you could be stuck in that whirlwind of selling, hiring, increasing your labor line, but never increasing your profit margins, right? So you grow to continue to own a nonprofit. The JVs has helped us, even through these last 2 years of challenging times. We are in the red right now. Again, part of being an owner, as far as the drop in production because of the industry. Now, I can look at the stats and tell you at least our agents are outproducing the market, because I can see what the other companies are down and my agents aren't down as much. So it shows that our systems are working, never content, always moving forward, but they're working.
You were talking organically about how you grew the business. And I think that's like really one of the things that we're talking about today is you just gave us straight up how you grew the business and then, organically, and then you watch things, and just because the market shift goes down doesn't mean that you throw the baby out with the bathwater. You just have to you have to keep an eye on that and know that your agents are outperforming the others. And I think that's also one of the things that people don't realize, whether you're a solo practitioner, whether you're part of a team, whether you got a large team, or whether you decide to open your own company. We've talked about this is not for the faint of heart. It's also not for those that spend as quickly as they earn. And so the ability to save reserves and plan for that proverbial rainy day, I have seen that be an absolute cause for long-term success or very rapid failure from people who weren't able to beg that out. I mean, for every Uber driver that I use in every state who has a real estate license, they are not in the position to be able to manage that, that long term, right? To make the investment that it takes for the time that it takes to generate revenue. And then in a slow market, because there's always going to be highs and lows. So
if it wasn't for our own production, I mean, I would not say that we would have folded by now because we love what we do, but it has certainly helped. Both Jesse and I were top producers. Prior we were rainmakers, so we still have that production, right? We could still float the entire company with our own production. Without producing, being out there, it would be a big challenge right now. My heart says I would still be here, doing it because I love the people. I'll never let them go. The tides are going to turn. How can we get out of this together? My real estate partner, probably not. He probably would fold if he wasn't selling and the company's losing money. And he'd probably go guide some fly fishing trips in Alaska because that's where he comes from. But it has been an incredible journey. I could tell you that, Tammy. Even before Jesse and I started our partnership, because both of us were top producers at our previous company, we had interviewed, multiple attorneys. We interviewed multiple partnerships that failed, multiple partnerships that succeeded to take on the advice. What should we do? Are we making the right decision? Because we have an incredible book of business. Are we making the right decision? A lot of people are telling us avoid a partnership at all cost. So we had to navigate through that and decide, what are we going to do? In our partnership, I'm open. We are 50-50 partners. I had a bigger database, more production, more years in service than he had. But I also had a child. He had no children, so he's more committed to the work. I don't like the synergy that a 49-51 partnership brings. So to me, we were equally yoked from the start. And something that has kept us together now for 14 years, 13 years at C3 is the fact that, we do meet regularly. If we have to massage our partnership agreement, we'll do that. Critical conversations, new initiatives at the company level, we don't always see eye to eye, but we seek legal counsel, whenever we have a stalemate or a decision that, we both want to go in a different direction. So, and I'm happy to share, a lot of the structure that we have within our partnership agreement, lessons that we've learned along the way, mistakes that we've made along the way in hopes that others will succeed. But I always say you have to have a passion to be an employing broker owner anywhere across the country because of how challenging it is. Right? So, we had to decide, do we want to franchise or do we want to start our own thing? So
sure.
Those pros and cons.
There's no end to the decisions that you have to make. And Jack, I know in your career, after the market crashed in 2008, you and your business partner made the decision not to go again in the direction of a team. Tell me the kinds of things that you two were talking about, the things that played into your decision to go in a completely different direction than this.
Yeah, for us, it was interesting because when we started our team, there were only 2 other teams in the entire marketplace back in '98.
You're dating yourself, Jack.
I know that. I realize that. And also, we were the first team for our company, so there was not even a company policy on how to deal with teams. So it started with me and my business partner, Robert. And then we added people one by one. And the reason we started adding people was because we had these frustration moments when we were drowning and we're like, we need to get some help and bring somebody on. And that seemed to, this works much better. It's more profitable. It's more enjoyable. And that goes really well. We're generating business, too much again for everybody. And then we're adding another person. And so we got to the point where we had, I think, 6 or 7 people on the team total and really good production. And then the market shifted dramatically.
Yeah.
And so when the market shifted and we kind of waited for the dust to settle, and we were reevaluating when business started taking off again, there's a lot of responsibility that comes. And John, I know you see this when you're the head of a team or head of a company and you're bringing somebody in, on a team, this is not for the photo op. And I think that's what you alluded to this earlier. It's not for the ego stroke. It's not for the photo op. It should be fulfilling a need that you have more business you can keep up with, and you're going to bring somebody in to help share the wealth and then teach them and train them and help them and grow as a team, grow your business. If you're just adding people to the picture at the header on the website or the magazine or whatever it is, you're not really accomplishing anything. And so Robert and I looked at this, Tammy, and we were like, we had really, really good production, but we realized we were doing much larger transactions and much fewer transactions. That was the key. We're like, wait a minute, we don't need a team. We're only doing, there was a time we were doing 80, 85 transactions a year. And then we're doing 25 to 30 transactions a year, but making a whole lot more money because they're much
at a
larger
higher price
transactions.
point.
That's right. We were committed to the luxury price point. and committed to this level of service our clients expected. So we decided to focus on that instead. And then there was this balance, and you alluded to this earlier, John. I want to share something. I want to get your take on this. We realized we had a good balance where we could have a life and generate a good, healthy income, and it felt like we were in balance. And if we were number one in the company or number one in anything, that's great. If we weren't, I'm okay with that, because my goal is not to be the number one of anything. My goal is to have a quality of life and to do a great job for our clients. We had I've shared this with Tammy before, I think recently, about 6 months ago or so. I was working with another agent who is also a large producer in our marketplace, been in business for a long time. And we were in a transaction together, and it would take her days to return a phone call to me. I would text her, and it would take her 2 days to return the text and days to return a call. Or she'd set up meetings and cancel time after time. And I finally called her to the carpet on. I said, "Look," I'm not accustomed to interacting this way. I need better responsiveness. I know our clients deserve better responsiveness, and what I'm getting, I'm really disappointed in how that's going." And her response to me was, "Jack, you don't understand. I work 24/7 for my clients. I'm working all the time." And she says, "You're going to the cabin on the weekends. You're going on vacations. You've got a family, and you've got a business partner who helps you." And he says, "I'm working on my own 24/7. He says, "It's just a lot. I'm doing the best I can." And I said to her, "I'm doing this by choice." I said, "I'm working with a business partner so that I can have a life. That's why." And John, I'm sure you've seen people like that in your own marketplace. How do you coach your own agents and talk to them about that?
Man, we're always talking about service, Jack, and we align very well. I often say you need to hire the support to give you the support to get you to the next level of business. In other words, most people will wait until they start dropping the ball. They're not communicating effectively. They're not returning calls and emails in a timely manner. Then they realize, oh, my business is up here. I need an assistant. They hire an assistant into the level of production that they're at. I kind of hire for you can kind of see what's in the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
I know the life that I want to have. I know the healthy relationship that I want with my wife and my kids, and with my faith and my parents and my mom. And Tammy and I shed some tears earlier just because I'm dealing with my dad passing right now. Tammy's dealing with her mom that just passed, and I do not want my life on earth to be a mistake. And I want my wife to say she had an incredible husband, and my kids to say they had an incredible dad. But let me talk about two things, Jack, that came to mind. Ninja selling, I know a lot of people are familiar with that, talks about, the ninja is somebody who works less and makes more, right? It was the person that was in the office the least amount of time. It's high income per hour. It's Socratic selling. It's built through relationships. Like, that has always resonated with me, and I've lived my life to that, right? There's a movie that's out there, and it was In Pursuit of Happiness by Will Smith. That guy, to me, was a ninja. You'll have to watch it, because he had, let's say, 6 hours to make X amount of phone calls. Otherwise, he'd be sleeping in the bathroom with this kid. Watch that movie. To me, that was a ninja on steroids. And then the third thing that stands out to me is my oldest son was born premature, right? So my wife was flight for life from Northern Colorado all the way down to Denver. This is after multiple miscarriages. Now I'm going to miscarry it. She was 6 months pregnant going into labor, on this other attempt. And I get down to the hospital, and the nurses are all frantic, and they're doing this and they're doing that, and they're checking vitals and dilation. And I saw the birthing doctor for 5 minutes. He came in, she delivered, handed it off to the nurses, and he was out. And I look at all this, and I'm like, who do we remember the most? The birthing doctor. Who got paid the most? The birthing doctor. So I've always had that's what I want to be. And I think a lot of times as realtors, we're doing non-income producing tasks. It's taking our time away from other priorities of life, right? So hire that assist, identify what your strengths and weaknesses are, have that staff member do everything that's time consuming for you, right? And delegate that, and delegate it effectively. As you grow your business, you might need to hire additional support. But that goes back to the best teams that I've ever seen in real estate have one admin personnel and one buyer's agent, right? So that frees up an enormous amount of your time so that you can focus on your services, your marketing, right? The communication, getting your seller's property sold. right? And my buyer's agent was with me for around 10 years. And then she just retired this year. All my people are retiring before I'm retiring. That's a problem. But
It is.
it's also, as a leader, it's a reward. Like
Yeah.
you helped them, they helped you,
John,
right?
I want
So
to I want to make one slight vocabulary adjustment
yes,
or
please.
so when you talk about non-income producing tasks or that whole concept, I think it's about identifying the highest and best use for your own individual talents because all of those things are necessary. That birthing doctor could not do what he does without the nurses and the person
Right.
who checks in the patient and does all the admin. So all of them play into the income producing thing, but I think it's about identifying for each of us the highest and best use that allow us to deliver the best of what our strengths are.
But here's the challenge with that, Tammy, is
Oh,
these
okay.
realtors come and they say, I've always inputted my own properties into the MLS. I'm a graphic designer. I'm going to do my own brochure. I'm going to do my own postcard. I'm going to do my own Craigslist posting. I'm going to do my own. That's not your job.
Right.
That's your job is to be face to face with your clients, right? It's to negotiate terms. It's to be at the
Yeah.
closing table.
Yeah.
So, there's this one class that I taught and it's called Fire Yourself. Like, even if you are good at something, my wife is a great house cleaner. She's incredible, but her kids deserve more of her
Yeah.
time. She needs to
Yep.
fire herself to hire a cleaner. Even if that cleaner isn't as good as
Yep.
she is, it freed up her time so she could focus on something else, right? So I have
That's a
those
great
agents.
analogy.
Those agents will cripple themselves because they micromanage and they do everything themselves because I'm better at it. I'm better with buyers. I'm better.
Yep.
Is that the best use of your time, right?
Right.
So
That's where I'm going after. What's the
yeah,
highest and
yeah.
best use? Yeah.
It could be a challenge, so you
Yeah.
really have to look at it and say, yeah, what's the best use of my time? What
Yeah.
am I passionate about?
Yeah.
But oftentimes I'm like, it's time to fire yourself. You need to hire somebody for that so you could do this.
Yep.
Are you delivering signs? Are you staking your own signs in frozen earth and through the weed liner and clay and rocky soil? Or are you delivering brochures? There's courier services that you could pay
Yep.
$25 to go deliver those brochures for you. There's high school
Yep.
kids that'll mow grass for you. So you always have to
Exactly.
look at that.
Something that Alan Haynes and the Cyberstars used to always say back in the 80s when this whole technology thing was going on, right? Like, don't try to do it yourself, just hire a teenager.
Just that's right.
Just hire a teenager.
Just
There's
hire a teenager.
one other thing that you said a few minutes ago that I want to kind of go down that path. And that was if you're making changes, having to decide whether whether you want to build a team, whether you want to be with a franchise, whether you want to create independent. I remember um in 2008, 2009, right? Like when the market just absolutely crashed. We happened to be, my mom and I, and my brother was with us at the time, and one transaction manager functioning as a team. And we were with a large franchise, and we realized that we were surrounded by 50 agents in that office who were all complaining that there was no business, right? Like the culture, as you say, was really bad. And one day, mom happened to drive by a storefront on like the most visible waterfront streets, like the Rodeo Drive, the Sixth Avenue, right?
Yeah.
And it was an optometry shop that had been there for decades, right? And all of a sudden she saw the paper up in the windows. She's like, oh, ho, ho, ho. And so she did some digging and found out, and they were indeed going to be leasing that space. And she evaluated it, and we sat down as a team and we said, okay, here's the deal. We could go get that space, but it means leaving the franchise and trading those fees to go independent and to create our own company, right? And that was a huge risk, especially, what a great time to go independent, right? To open your own company when there's like
Right.
nothing going on. Turned out to be the best time ever. But also, as we opened our company, we still functioned as that small team, and together we decided. Mom set a rule in order to come work for our brokerage. She had to have given birth to you.
She had to what?
have given birth to
Oh, giving
you,
birth to you.
right?
That's
It was
hilarious.
the true epitome of the family company, right? But there were people who were clamoring to come work for us, and mom had no interest in taking the responsibility for people other than those that she had given birth to, and she could, manage us appropriately, right?
That's hilarious.
But it was really something. And so we talk about all those decisions at various different stages. And so there's big, there's small, there's franchise, there's independent, and just so many things go into those decisions for sure.
I think a
Yeah,
lot of people too, sorry, I think a lot of people too, I've heard the description of, when you're learning to swim, you have to let go of one side of the pool to get to the other. You can't have your hands in both places.
Yeah.
And so it's a little risky, it's a little scary, but sometimes you just have to do that. And I know that when I started in real estate, Robert, my business partner, joined me 6 months later. And this will paint the picture really well to what you were describing earlier, John. And that is, in the 6 month of real estate, I had six closings, and I was doing everything myself. And back then we didn't have transaction managers, and only the very top agents had assistants. Now that wasn't me either. So bringing on a business partner meant suddenly half of my income is going to go away, but I knew I couldn't keep doing this pace and grow my own business any further. And so it was the best thing I ever did. The two of us together do way more than each of us could do individually. It's a synergy that has worked really, really well through the years. But it's a scary thing to do that. But sometimes you've got to, when you get to that point where because what happened during that time, John, I was so focused on the closing details. I was focused on everything. And as a new agent, there was no repeat or referral business. It was only what I generated. And so I was so focused on the details, I quit generating. So after the
Mm.
6 month, Robert quit a job that he had for 15 years and joined me. He gave up a salary, bonuses, a company car, company trips, all these wonderful perks. And the next month, I had zero closings. And the next month, we had zero closings again. And Robert said, I'm going to have to go work at Home Depot. But we quickly realized the reason that happened is because my focus was on the wrong things. We weren't
Mhm.
generating business. And so and you said this earlier, you have to get ahead of it. You have to realize where you're going and not wait for it to get to that point. And so that was a big learning, a big teachable moment for me in my own business right in the very beginning. And we've carried that through to this day. We know when we need to look forward and change something to adapt to the market conditions we're in.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I see the wrong people trying to structure the wrong team or even start the wrong company. They're not ready. I think people really need to look at, do I want a team? Do I want a company? You got to do your research for both, right? If you're not a rainmaker, if you're not a top producer, what are you looking for a team for? Usually it's the people that are trying to save on costs. They're leaving a broker to start their own thing, not knowing the cost. It's what Tammy was talking about. Now they have to have their own office. They have those expenses, right? Now you have a profit and loss statement. Now you hire an employee, then eventually you have a managing broker. They realize, well, geez, it was nicer over here. I could have been more profitable over here. I do have, I would say, 11 agents here that either had their own companies, have the abilities to run their own companies, that choose to operate under our C3 umbrella because it's much more affordable for them. They realize these are those that are savvy, and I can make a better living here versus starting my own thing, out there. And again, Jesse and I like to absorb a lot of the labor and the legal as far as dealing with the day-to-day and the ever weekly changes, daily changes that we have in this industry, right? We're dealing with new protocols and new addendums and amendments and commission rules, and you're the one having to spend that time to create all that. So we love what we do right now, but it's not after sacrifice, some financial loss, that we are where we are today. I can't say that we've made a mistake. We love the size of our company. I would love to have maintained that 150, of the best, realtors that are out there, those that compete with you guys on a professional level. And that's it. We have identified ourselves as far as we don't want to grow more. And the biggest reason is because Jesse and I, we know what our enough is. there's companies that are trying to buy us right now, and they want to take C3, national or across Colorado. And I already had that corporate job. I had 35
Yeah.
restaurants in 4 states, and that was sacrifice. Never saw my wife, right? So here it's like we've identified our region to northern Colorado, and this is it. If we lose one, we'll interview 10 and we'll hire the best person that we feel will match our company culture. So might we start another satellite office in another neighboring town? Maybe, if we have the right leader and we have the bandwidth, to do that. So I would say to have a company of this size, we've been fortunate because we do have Jesse and I's passion and history have put us where we're at right now, but we have incredible employees, staff members, we call them family members as well. And we have incredible leaders. Our managing brokers are the most experienced. If 20, 30, 36 years in the industry, these are individuals leading other companies. So they know what they're doing. They're savvier than Jesse and I are. We created this platform, but thankfully we attracted them. Well, they shoulder a lot of the responsibility, which gives John and Jesse some freedom to spend time, with our family and our loved ones. So I did get criticized by a local employee broker on Facebook. He says, John doesn't have time for you. Look, he's always with his family. I mean, first off, I thought it was called social media and not business media, right? Like, I don't know. But that resonated with me. And I'm like, you know what? Good. Because I've always put my family in front of business.
Exactly. That was my point earlier when I shared the anecdotal story I shared a few minutes ago. Now, and I think what I'm hearing from you, John, and what I heard from you, Tammy, earlier with your mom setting up shop and saying she's only hiring the one she gave birth to, is in both scenarios, whether it's the company of 5, in your case, Tammy, or the company of 150. I'm hearing quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of theme that I'm hearing, and in my own story as well. We're choosing quantity over quality, quality over quantity, quality of life over just having the sheer numbers.
Yeah.
And as the person who you said you were criticized on social media, that's essentially what I was receiving from this other agent saying, you're going to the cabin, you're doing stuff with your family on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I am, and I'm going to continue to. And I want to have a life first. And real estate helps me have that life. I think that's for all of us. That's what we really ought to be, not to get preachy, but I think that's what the goal really ought to be, is having that
That's
life.
right.
Yep.
When you either have
It
to have
sure
the
is.
systems or you have to have the support to be able to do that.
That's right.
Yep. Yep.
Right. So
Well,
thankful to have incredible support here. I had one assistant she's been with me since my restaurant days, since Johnny Carino's days. So 25 years. I've watched her grow up, get married to another employee from Johnny Carino's, and have 3 kids. I have another gal. She's been with me for 19 years. And then my right arm right now is Tiffany Breitbarth. A shout out to her. She's been with me for 15 years. So we work well together, and we counter each other so that each one of us has a life while doing a high level of production, overseeing 5 different companies, 5 different P&Ls, and a lot of people. It can be done with systems, organization, and support.
Well, I am grateful to both of you for being here today, and I know we could keep going on, and I look forward to meeting with each of you, Jack and John, individually, so we get to carry on this conversation over dinner and wine wherever our paths will cross. But for now, I have to wrap us up, and so I want to thank all of you for joining us on this episode of A State of Mind, the art of selling luxury real estate. If you're interested in learning more about the Institute, you can find more at luxuryhomemarketing.com. If you like what you just heard, please share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And if you've got a hot topic that you'd like us to discuss in a future podcast, feel free to let us know. Send an email to info@luxuryhomemarketing.com. Thanks so much for listening.